So education. Yes, ma'am. Take your time, ma'am. You have
Yeah.
everything.
Uh, During our last meeting last Monday, you asked us to present a formal proposal on the advantages and disadvantages of having limited face-to-face learning uh, at this time, pero limited only in areas where there is low risk assessment and where there is compliance with the requirements of the Department of Education, as well as compliance with the minimum health requirements of the department.
Yes.
Only in
I
these
now
places,
I now remember
not
it.
for everybody, only for those which are considered low risk. And if there is face to face, it will not be for the entire 5 days of a school week. It could only be 1 day or 2 days, and the sessions could be limited to the most important things that a child should learn. And it is now being done. LaSalle did it. They started last June, and there's a very small school in Siquijor. It's also started last June, also with limited face-to-face, and it's working. So the local government officials have been writing us, and international schools also have been writing us and requesting if we can allow limited face-to-face for those who will be able to take the necessary precautions. And so we have submitted, Mr. President, to the Secretariat both a PowerPoint presentation as well as a text describing how it's going to be done.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So, so we are complying with your instructions. Uh, and if I may divert, because a while back you were talking about medicine, we have Filipinos who finished medicine in Russia, and they are practicing in the Philippines. My niece did finished her studies in medicine in Russia for 7 years in the Russian language at the top of her class. And she's now provincial health officer in Catanduanes. And there are several more. There was a period when Filipinos went to Russia, but uh, without the usual official arrangements. And they finished, and some of them are back, so they can really vouch for the high quality of medical education. But to go back to face-to-face, I am just submitting. You may not have time anymore at this hour to listen to the presentation.
No, I have.
Okay.
Uh,
Yes. Can I please?
I
Yes.
must listen to you, not only find the time.
We are very pleased and happy to report that in terms of the public and private school enrollment total, in spite of the combined impact of COVID as well as the destruction on the economy, the downturn of the economy, we were able to achieve 77% of the total enrollment compared to last year. Sa public, 90% of our students last year ang naabot natin. So, in spite of these two very difficult situations na kaya natin, ang ating problem is with the private school enrollees kasi only 27% have returned. And we now have this, what I describe as the phenomenon of private school students migrating to the public school. Ang latest number is 347,860. And this is because, Mr. President, the private schools have been affected by the downturn in the economy. Dahil parents who lose their jobs cannot already fund the studies of their students. So I also have presented a timeline when we all started. We started our work April, May 28. That's when you express support for blended learning. And when you gave instructions that you will not allow face-to-face learning, we also correspondingly took out from our learning continuity program the face-to-face learning portion. But right now, Mr. President, we are receiving many queries and many requests from local chief executives, from legislators, private and international schools. There are 71 international schools all over the country, and they are requesting if limited face-to-face classes can be held. I have here a few slides which I will not repeat anymore, wherein we showed that children are not as badly affected by the COVID phenomenon as the adults, especially the elderly. We are saying that of the total confirmed cases, for example, out of our 67,456 confirmed cases, only 2,832, most of them also mild, or 4%, 4.20% are children. And in terms of our records, Mr. President, we only have 16 recorded deaths of children, which is 0.87% of the total deaths as of July 19, Mr. President. No. So now I go to the possible terms and conditions. What would be the advantage of limited face-to-face? Well, both the learners, our students, and our teachers are familiar with face-to-face learning, so they will not have difficulty adjusting. Administrative costs will also be lower, and also the limited face-to-face classes closes inequality gaps. Kasi kung we rely, for example, heavily on online learning, then you will have equity problems for those who may not have access to digital equipment. And also, this is the most important, when we teach our children, we teach them not only about facts, about knowledge, about philosophies, about history, but we teach them how to deal with their fellow human beings. And that can only be attained to a great degree by face-to-face interaction among children, especially as they are young. Now, some of the disadvantages are, of course, the health risks. That's why we want to limit very strictly the implementation of face-to-face, and also the administrative costs, because maintaining the health standards and so on, and also of our own buildings will also be costly for us. Now, what are the possible terms and conditions which we can impose, aside from the fact that those who will be allowed to do so should be at the lower risk assessment? So we say that the first condition is that it can only be allowed in low-risk areas, or those at least under modified general community quarantine in the transition phase. But it has to be on a case-to-case basis, as advised by Secretary Galvez. The next is, we were thinking that up to January 2021, during the third quarter, we can start allowing. Between August and at present, we will be assessing the schools. Secretary Galvez advises us to make physical inspections of the facilities of the schools. So we can do it up to January, but as I said, Lasal already is into it since June, and then the little island of Siquijor has been quietly having its own version also since June as well. Now, what are other terms? We are saying, for example, Mr. President, that we should be coordinating not only within DepEd, but the LGUs concerned, because they are the ones asking for it mainly, and the local health authorities. And then the fourth condition that we would like to impose is we have to have stringent health standards, especially at this time. We were thinking perhaps August, no, but with the new developments, the numbers, and so on, we should be imposing stringent health standards as suggested by the Department of Health and also by AITF. and some of these will take time, like preparing the buildings, making sure that social distancing will be observed, and also how do we do physical education. And there's also advice that we have to, but this will not be difficult for our public schools kasi hindi naman sila air-conditioned, dinidiscourage ang air-conditioned classes, etc. And also, number 5 takes into consideration very seriously the advice of Secretary Galvez and Secretary Anyo that we have to have a joint inspection. It's not automatic. Kung low risk ka, pwede ka nang mag-open. No, they have to be inspected. And I was saying that DepEd, since the time of your mother, is structured in such a manner that you have people down to the principal level, the superintendent, and so on, who really know what is the situation at the frontline level. So we want to follow the advice of the National Task Force. So in summary, Mr. President, for basic education, we are saying that maybe we can allow limited face-to-face learning, but to be strictly regulated in the light of present conditions. So we have to listen to at least 4 agencies which would have an interest in the matter. 1, the location of the schools have to be assessed as low risk, but that is only the first step, Mr. President. Secondly, our schools have to be friendly to the idea of face-to-face during the time of COVID. Like, we cannot allow schools with very small classrooms. Kung small ang classrooms, we have to adjust the number of students in a class, maybe 10 per batch and so on. And then they have to be in good state of repair. They are safe kasi dumaanan ng mga bagyo, may lindol, may putok ng bulkan, and we have to make sure na even if they are safe from COVID, they might not be safe also from weak or weakened buildings of ours. So, kailangan din standard and physical condition ng aming schools. And then, importante is that the schools should also meet the minimum health standards. We have already, as per your instruction, we already have organized and created also our minimum health standards, and it is in writing. We have circulated it actually in DepEd already, because school or no school, we are imposing the minimum health standards. And this is in consultation with DOH. We benefit so much from their advice. And then 4th, the host local government, because they are largely the ones who are asking for this, aside from the international schools, they have to be ready to support financially the schools, because they have the SEF. SEF is a national tax on real property, 1% of which should go to education, and which the provinces collect. So it's a national tax. It's our national tax, which the provinces are collecting, yung SEF, the Special Education Fund. So they have to be prepared to help finance the needs of these schools. So itong 4 na conditions, Mr. President, have to be fulfilled before we allow limited. The accent is on limited because the public is reaction na may meme pa sa Secretary of Education na I said daw patay kung patay pero kailangan magklase, which of course is not. I would not be capable of making such a statement. It is widely circulated, and so this is very important to us to continue the learning process, but at the same time assure the safety of our students. So, ayon, Mr. President. And then we have a written text also about this presentation. So, ayon. For your consideration. Limited lang talaga, sir. Like, those who are asking are like Siquijor or like the Nagat Islands, Siargao. They're the ones who probably halos 0 level. and then local governments who are now declared as low risk. Yun, sila ang mag...
I'm with you on this.
Thank you.
Let's try to make ourselves productive even how constricted the times are. Okay ako sa ano.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Uh,